Everyone ready?
Got it. Okay, welcome. Welcome to the meeting tonight, Tuesday, August 22nd, Board of Ed. Team, roll call.
Dr. Cordolino? Here. Mr. Daughtry?
Here.
Mrs. Fano? Here. Mr. Grau?
Here.
Mr. Palma?
Here.
Mr. Petrosino?
Here.
Mr. Rappaport?
Here.
Ms. Zuckerman? Here. Dr. Modrak?
Here. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open record, that.
The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Montville Township Board of Education provided a public notice of this meeting, which included the time, date, and location, that was posted at the Montville Township Municipal Building, all Montville Public Schools, the Montville Public Library, the Montville Township Board of Education Administrative Office Building, the district website, and advertised in the Daily Record, the board's official newspaper, on January 22nd, 2023.
Okay, so we have a couple presentations. First one is New Jersey's graduation proficiency assessment results. Dr. Shorter will be doing that. Then after that, we're going to be having a discussion about item K16 primarily. That's the referendum language. We have bond counsel here, financial presentation, and Dr. Foreman will also be talking to that. So turn it over to Dr. Foreman.
Sure.
Good evening. This evening I'm going to give you a very short presentation on the recent results of the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment. Just a little background, I guess. I mean, normally I do the district performance report in one of the October meetings, which incorporates all of the standardized testing and things like that. This is a little bit irregular doing a test assessment results presentation this early, but the state law requires that, or the New Jersey Department of Ed requires a 60-day window from when the results are released to when you have to publicly present to the Board of Education. So this is within that 60-day window, but if we waited till the September meeting, we would be beyond that window. So that's the reason why we had to share this presentation tonight. As some of you may or may not know, in September of 2021, the State Board of Education adopted a graduation assessment requirement for students to show proficiency in ELA and mathematics, English Language Arts and Mathematics, to graduate. So in 2021, that was approved and moved forward. It was updated in 2023 when Governor Murphy determined that the class of 2023 would not be, that was last year's class, would not be subjected to this graduation requirement, and it was administered as a field test. So somewhere around this time last year, I did present the field test results of the NJGPA. And after the field test, the State Board of Education approved moving forward the new cut score for this administration that I'm going to share with you tonight. And for the classes of 2024 and the class of 2025, they will be required to achieve a passing score on this and some other options if they don't to graduate. So that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. Essentially, there are three pathways to graduation. The first one is kind of why we're here tonight. The students have to demonstrate a proficiency in the NJGPA standardized assessment in ELA and mathematics. Any students that fail to do that, there's a second pathway option, which is for them to achieve a designated score on different competency tests, such as the PSAT, SAT, ACT, or the AccuPlacer. So students, there are cut scores on those scores that would then allow students to achieve graduation. And then third and final pathway to graduate high schools in New Jersey would be to submit a student portfolio appeal through the school and submit that to the Department of Education. So those are the 3 pathways for New Jersey students to graduate. So for our students, we're required to share our student results, compare that to the state of New Jersey, and also one of the subcategories that we also have to include in our analysis are students with IEPs. Pretty straightforward, very basic numbers. As you can see, 95% of our students in the area of English language arts demonstrated graduation-ready credentials, and 5% did not. And then you can see the state comparison, which, those that have been, sitting through these over the years, Montville continues to outperform pretty significantly the overall state scores in these areas. And of course, our students with the IEPs, also 7% of those juniors, when they took this test, showed graduation-ready proficiency. So that's the area of English language arts. In mathematics, you'll see there 80% of students in Montville Township High School deemed graduation-ready based on this. And then you see the state comparison and students with the IEPs. And as a side, I didn't mention the ELA is based off the 10th grade or grade 10 standards in the English language arts. The mathematics standards that are used for this proficiency level is areas of algebra and geometry. So I think, obviously across the state and even in district here, you do see the math area, probably because it's areas of geometry and algebra. We score a little bit lower in those areas. And then of course, students with the IEPs, you can see their scores also. Part of the requirement of sharing data publicly is to share with the subgroups. And the subgroups that qualify with the number of students that took the test are 3 ethnic subgroups in Montville: the Hispanic, Asian, and white population. And you can see their performance level broken out by subgroup of race on the NJGPA ELA. And then the math proficiency based on subgroup of race, and you can see the 3 categories there also. And the NJGPA is only in those 2 subjects, so there isn't any graduation requirement for science or things like that as part of this test. So now we have these results. This is really the first year beyond the field test that was last year. That didn't really give us much of any data to utilize. This is the first year that we're going to utilize this data. And the first step in the next slide is pretty standard fare of how we respond to all of these state standardized assessments. The principals and supervisors get together with teachers and review the assessment data, try to identify areas that we can improve. They discuss that in department meetings. They break down the data and the questions and the performance our students did in a very granular fashion. So hopefully through instructional practices in the class, we can try to improve some of those areas moving forward. I mean, the students at this point, they're kind of past, 11th grades took it, and they move on the 12th grade. So we really want to look at more of a globally assess maybe the curriculum to see, are there ways that our 11th graders could achieve a little bit better moving forward, or whether it's the NJGPA or any of the standardized tests that we need to administer. And then the next steps are things that we do pretty much in a standard fashion over the last couple of years, through additional supplementary instruction, the basic skills and learning labs. Mental health continues to impact student performance. So that's an area, as you know, is through district goals and board goals, we've continued to address on the mental health level. And then, of course, ongoing professional development that continues. SIOP into the 2nd year of doing that, or maybe the 3rd year this year. And different adopted instructional programs to help us improve in the various areas, in this case particularly English language arts and math. So that's generally the scores in a nutshell, pretty basic, but that's where we fell after the first administration of the graduation assessment in the district. So I'm willing to field any questions. Christine?
Thank you, Casey. I just have a question. When you talk about the 3 pathways, when you get to the 3rd one, the appeal, does our guidance counselors help the family with that appeal? That was the one question I had. And the second thing is, for those students that do not have IEPs, but really don't make any of those 3 pathways, what do they do and how do we help them?
So since the third pathway was in place, we've been, I think, 100% successful in every one of those. The third pathway, we actually have teachers assist students. Those teachers are paid additional stipend to work with any student that might be identified that needs that third pathway option. And the teachers in that subject area work with those students to put that portfolio assessment together, which they deem is proficient. And once that's collected, assessed, and evaluated, that's sent down to the State Department of Education for approval. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, I think 100% of the time, students that had to engage in that third pathway were successful.
We haven't had anyone who has had to submit a portfolio in 5 years. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone else?
That pathway was also preceded NJGPA with the other graduation assessments, so that's why this test is somewhat new, but the third pathway's been around for a while.
I just have a question real quick. For those students that get to that second pathway that do not have IEPs, do you find that some of those students maybe should have had IEPs? Or maybe had a disability that no one knew about? I'm just curious.
Well, I think historically, to Andrew's point, it's been about 5 years since we had to go to pathway 3, which tells us the overwhelming majority of our students, if not the first pathway, satisfies that graduation requirement with the second pathway, and those cut scores. So as long as they achieve that, we feel like we're in a pretty good spot.
Other questions? Okay then.
I have one question. On that first slide, 95% of our students passed, and I think the third one was students with IEPs. Is that third row Montville, or is that the general?
That's Montville, it's in district.
And are those students with IEPs included in that overall Montville number?
Yes.
No further questions? Dr. Foreman, would you like to?
So yes, thank you. Thank you for that report. Just real quick, one amendment to the agenda, page 10, L33. The daily pay rate is going to be $284.91. So it's a difference of 5 cents that's listed on the agenda. That's L33, which you'll be voting on later. Just some more good news, just wanted to share out. I'm always cautious to share out good news based on rankings and ratings that are out there because they change year to year and we don't know how they calculate a lot of these rankings and ratings, truly. But good news is good news, and Montville is consistently ranked and rated very highly and as a great place to live and with great schools. The latest was the U.S. News report that came out that Montville Township High School was 87th in New Jersey, but when you take out the academies or you take out the magnet schools, there's about 17 of them, then Montville High School turns out to be ranked 70th. We were also ranked 215th in this New York metro area. So rankings aside, when you look at a lot of these independent reporting agencies and things like that, Montville High School and Montville schools are continually recognized by these outside organizations as achieving, very high achieving and doing quite well. So kudos to everybody that's been working with that. That's a big shout out to the teachers, to the parents, of course the students and the administrators that are working with them, but this is consistent from year in, year out. So congratulations on that recognition. Next thing is my referendum. We have some outside consultants that are going to be coming here and speaking to us a little bit, but I just want to set the stage a little bit of what's been going on. So tonight is the 9th month that we've been discussing the referendum and try to how to address the student enrollment analysis and the possible referendum solution. To highlight the major challenges facing the district, in 5 years, the elementary schools will have 410 unhoused students. Unhoused students mean that we're over capacity. Currently, we're over capacity by 100 students in the elementary schools, and we're growing in this over capacity. We've increased the migration patterns in this town, which means more people are moving into town. We've seen an increase in birth rates, and we have new housing being developed. The elementary schools are currently over capacity, and the addition of more students will exacerbate this issue. While the enrollment changes will affect all 7 of the schools, Lazar Middle School and Montville Township High School will be able to ebb and flow with the changes because of the size of those schools and absorb the impact of those students. But the impact will mostly be felt at the elementary schools. Over the past 10 years, the district has reallocated the use of space due to offering more preschool classes, bringing more special education students back into the district, and increased student services provided for all students. So we investigated 5 different solutions. One was to do nothing. Another one was to add trailers or modular classrooms. Another was to build a new school. A 4th one was redistricting. And the final solution is what we're presenting tonight. And we believe it's the best solution to move forward to address the challenges that are before us. There will be 2 questions asked of the voters. The first will include renovations and upgrades to 25 small group instructional classrooms, the construction of 23 elementary classrooms, and the construction of 3 large flexible spaces or multi-purpose rooms. The cost of these projects is $53 million. The second question will only go into effect if the first question is approved. And this includes the construction of 5 security vestibules and the improvement and renovation of the HVAC, which is the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at 5 schools. The cost of these projects is $16.9 million. This brings the total referendum proposal to approximately $69 million, of which the state aid will provide about $10 million to help offset the total cost. This referendum will ask the taxpayers for $410 on the average assessed home value of $535,000. I just want to stress that. That's the average assessed home value. Also of note, because we did not receive the proper paperwork back from the state in a timely manner, the referendum vote will now have to be December 12th. So tonight the board will be asked to vote on a referendum bond proposal and the wording. A successful vote tonight allows the district to be able to communicate to all the particulars of the referendum to the public through social media, at back-to-school nights, and then begin our presentations to the community. An affirmative vote tonight allows the decision to be put into the voters' hands and the taxpayers of the Montville Township to decide on the future outcome of the schools. So I'm going to ask everybody here tonight to give them this opportunity to decide the future of the schools. Thank you. So you wanted to open it up, or did you want to do a presentation? Continue?
I just wanted to kind of pick up where we left off last time. So last time when we spoke, we hadn't received the final eligibility letters yet, and we did receive those since the last board meeting. In terms of where that came out, I'm just going to pass this page out to the board. What this page does is it just summarizes the outcome of those final eligibility letters. So Dr. Gorman had just mentioned the proposal of question 1 and 2. The 2 groupings represent question 1 in the first grouping and question 2 in the second grouping. And that first set of columns just summarizes the projects that are included in each one. He mentioned that the question 1 totaled $53 million, and question 2 a little short of $17 million, bringing you to the $70 million total. Of that, of those projects, when the state does the review, there are certain, and we spoke about this, there are certain costs that are fully eligible, such as renovations, and certain costs that are only partially eligible because a per square foot cost is applied to those projects. So those would be the additions. And that's what is shown in that second column. These numbers then, you'll notice, tie into the resolution that's on the board agenda. In total, question 1 received a little less than 7% in state aid, so instead of paying 100%, you're paying more like 93%. And in the case of question 2, it received 34%, So about a third is being picked up by the state of New Jersey for that. In addition to the debt service aid, we did an analysis and were able to affect the impact of the interest being earned on the principal by offsetting additional costs through us appropriating funds from our available savings in capital reserve. So that then lowers the tax impact as well as the total that cost of the issuance. And that contribution would be made over a 5-year period, so in incremental amounts based on how much was being retired and needed for that retirement. And then that concludes it with the last column, which brings the question 1 to a tax impact on the average assessed value of a house for 326. This question 2 would be 84, and that's where you come up with 410 total for both questions.
Real quick, one of the questions I had, and I'm sure other people have too, is why don't the classrooms get more state aid?
The funding formula for state aid is geared towards renovations over additions. So renovations are seen for their full value, whereas additions are set at a value of $143 per square foot. That number was very timely back 25 years ago when this law was originally put into place, but in the interim of the 25 years, it's never been increased. They've held it at that rate. And so it's kind of grown into almost a penalty for deciding to make it an addition.
Thank you. Did you have anything else? No.
So we have 2 of the board's advisors here. The first is Tony Solomini, who is here as your bond counsel, and the second is Danielle Marino, who is from Phoenix Group. That is your financial advisors. And they pretty much are here to answer any questions you have. They don't really have a presentation per se, but they're at the board's disposal.
So then we will open it up for discussion of the questions about the referendum. Board members, you are free to ask any question you want, raise any issues that you would like to. John, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Tom mentioned that we discussed 5 possible solutions to this issue. I guess I'd like to bring up a 6th, and that would be moving forward with the renovations, additions, well, all of the reservations, but as laid out, the additions to Hilldale, William Mason, and Woodmont only, and holding off on the 2. And my logic for proposing such, A, we don't have to ask the town for as much money up front. B, those are the 3 schools that do not currently have cafeterias and that multi-use space that we've been talking about for months. C, those are the 3 schools that would be impacted by the new developments in town the most. And D, we can always, in a couple years, if the impact is as great as maybe we projected, we can go back and get the other 2 schools their additions, but I think it's more prudent and more cautious to do it in a piecemeal fashion.
Can I ask you real quick then to clarify? Based on the projections of school enrollment, all 5 schools are projected to be well over capacity. And you want to hold back on 2 of the schools, wouldn't that then allow them to become significantly overcrowded past where they are currently? I mean, right now, all 5 schools are over capacity. And if you hold back, wouldn't you be increasing the problem at the other 2?
It's my understanding that we wouldn't be breaking ground on all 5 schools next summer anyway, so if we were only gonna do 2 schools that summer, we can move forward with these 2 schools, and then if in a year or 2 years, when we probably wouldn't break ground anyway, we would then go to the town and ask for that money.
Housing, teen housing, can we break ground?
With a December vote, we would be issuing the bonds in probably March, and we would be going out to bid probably in May or June. So by the time we would be able to get the contractors to begin to mobilize, we will definitely be at the back half of next summer going into the fall. We would then run the projects for as long as we can run them, weather permitting. If we had a winter like this past winter, we could continue through the entire winter and just keep going. We have had the discussion of how would we mobilize, and it would be the recommendation of the architect to mobilize 2 of the schools that are the greatest need first, and then we would roll out the others as we begin to move. There's not enough of an economy of scale from the perspective of doing all 5 at the same time, because the administration of 5 different buildings all having construction of this magnitude is probably more disruptive to the educational process than trying to manage the 2 at a time and then the 3.
Okay, so then we would be rolling these out, not all at once.
In terms of it's very possible that depending on interest rates, you would not actually issue the bonds all in the same time. We'd have to see where we are at the time of issuance.
So then, John, doesn't that mean then that we will, in fact, even if we pass the referendum, the whole referendum as it is, we will still not be rolling this out all at once? We will be taking some time to get the different construction projects started. And if it turns out that the numbers are not coming in the way that we believe that they will, then we can hold off on those projects.
Dave, can I have a question?
Wait, no, you don't agree?
I mean, is that, I don't think that's, no, I
Isn't that what you're asking?
I don't agree. I think we should be more prudent with our money.
And doesn't that fulfill it?
So you're saying that you would, if the numbers don't come in, you wouldn't complete the back 2 schools and
If
give
not,
the
what-
town their money back? Is that an option?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can ask bond counsel, but yeah.
On council.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Tony Solomon from Levent. How's it going tonight? So generally speaking, once the voters approve a referendum project, you have to deliver the project that was proposed to the voters, except if there's an intervening circumstance. So there's been some times where, in addition to a building, is contingent upon a new housing development or a town merging in with the school district. For some reason, that merger falls apart, the housing development, and then there's no need. Then you would be in a position where you might not necessarily have to do the project. But if there's nothing intervening that happens, you're required by law to deliver the project that was proposed to the voters.
Thank you.
Wait, John, have you gotten your questions answered?
I think I laid out enough for others to comment.
Okay. Side to side. Mike, down there.
I think at a previous meeting, the information was that all the money for the bonds has to go out at about the same time, and then the money that's not used would be put into interest-bearing accounts. But I think I just heard the team mention that not all the money needs to, well, not all the bonds need to be issued in March. Can that just be clarified so I understand exactly how that could work out?
Sure. So what the referendum would be approving would authorize the Board of Education to do a certain amount of projects and to borrow a certain amount of money. Now, how you borrow that money, the board then decides. So potentially, a lot of districts of late have been doing one bond sale because interest rates are so low and you only have to pay professionals one time. So a lot of times it makes sense to sell all the bonds at one time, even if you're not doing the projects all at the same time. And sometimes it makes sense now too, because there's an inverted yield curve and you have that money basically earning the same amount of interest that you're paying on the bonds. But potentially we do have other districts that if they're not doing the projects for 3-4 years, they do they stage it and have 1 bond sale, 2 bond sales, potentially up to 3 bond sales.
And that's a board level decision?
That's a board level decision.
Dave?
Karen?
So, if I understand what you said earlier regarding delivering a project once a bond has passed, the circumstance, the intervening circumstance in our case could, by others' opinion, be that the students don't come. Would that be considered enough of an intervening circumstance to not deliver on the other 2 school projects?
I think it's very factual based. If your position now is based on your demographic studies that your schools are overcrowded, I think whether or not additional students are coming, I almost think that's immaterial. If your position now is that, and your approvals are saying that your schools are overcrowded now, kind of seems what happens from that point forward almost seems immaterial. But I think it's a matter of degree and facts depending on,
And a question for you and maybe to team. If the board moved to do option 6, what would that mean in terms of where does that put us? Where does it leave us? What happens, like, what would we do next?
Well, just as a clarification of a statement that Tony just made. His statement was that your current eligibility evaluations that were done, the FDCs, indicate we are already over capacity. So the idea of, the point of it's not really an intervening event is because you're already there, regardless of what happens. And that was what he just referenced. So just to clarify that statement. I guess a question I would have to John as this proposal 6, does proposal 6 mean that question 2 is gone?
I think I would keep question 2 as written, actually.
Okay, so what that would mean then is that you would reduce question 1 from 53 million down to 40 and leave question 2 the 16 million, 17 million. What would that mean at Cedar Hill and Valley View is class sizes would have to go up. I mean, that's the only other way we can solve the problem right now.
And if I may, David, we talked a little bit or mentioned a little bit about trailers. I understand they're temporary solutions. Can you give us an idea of the cost involved?
So we had the architect look into trailers. Trailers are $250,000 each. That doesn't include a mechanism to secure it to the ground. A lot of times it's a slab. Additionally, there are restrictions on the use of trailers. They are in 2-year increments up to a 3-year renewal, so 6 years. So you would be able to have this solution for a 6-year period of time. It wouldn't be a permanent solution. One of the administrative issues that I think we would need to address is security. We have spent a lot of effort working the avenue with security of perimeter control. And when we're having students walk in and out of the building to a trailer that has no perimeter control, that's going to be an issue in terms of security. I don't have an answer to that type of question.
You said 250 million per trailer?
250,000.
250,000 per trailer? And how many trailers would we need in the first year?
Yeah, just guessing, you probably, probably 2 or 3 per school, maybe even more.
2 or 3 per school.
Yeah.
So
And
anywhere,
then you also need space. I don't know where, like at Woodmont, I don't know where we would put them.
Wouldn't we need these trailers anyway, even with the current proposal, because we
No.
can't break ground on more than 2 schools initially?
No, we believe we'll be able to house the students, make it a slightly more crowded until they get the construction done. The construction then would be done outside of the school, so we should be all right.
I don't understand how you can make room with one proposal but not in the other.
Because the enrollment isn't going to just jump up to its level.
Slowly growing.
It increases incrementally each year. So it is going to get crowded, but we hope to have the rooms in place to alleviate the greater amount of crowding that would occur if we didn't have these extra classrooms. Over here on the side.
Yeah. I think that one thing we're missing, if you want to reduce this or just do part of the referendum, you just can't come along in 2 years and decide you're going to do the rest. You then have to go through the whole referendum process again, okay? While it's true that nothing's going to get better at the state for the funding, okay, if anything, it's going to get worse with what's happening. But the point is, we've talked about the one proposal for the last 5 to 6 meetings. We would have discussed it and maybe voted on it in July, except for the time frame. The point I don't understand, Tom pointed out that we're already X number of students behind, not counting any new students. To us, go to 3 schools and say, oh, we're going to do something at your 3 schools, and we're not going to do something at your 2 schools, because you might be part of option 6, I don't think it's prudent. I think we're a school system, we have a responsibility for every school and every kid. The plan by the administration and the architect was laid out very nice, how to do this, how to take small group instructions out of the big classrooms and make divisions, how to take care of the security. And I think at this point, it's being thrown in to delay. And I came tonight to vote on, and I'm willing to listen to questions about what the proposal is. But I think at this point, what if we do 2, what if we do 3, what if we, it's just haphazard approach. And I think that it's been laid out, it's been discussed, and that's what we have to keep the focus in that avenue, I think. Anybody can be critical of whatever we do, and I'm sure there will be some people. But we have a responsibility to give it to the voters so they can decide, do they want to do this? And I think that's why we're here. That's my opinion.
Mike?
Well, actually Michelle's first.
Wait, Michelle, do you want to go then?
Okay, thanks. A couple questions and then I guess a comment. In terms of understanding the costs also, I guess, in thinking about trying to do a second, and I would like to echo, I think, a lot of what Charlie said, but a second referendum in a few years, there's a total cost to this whole referendum process. So what, all said and done, my understanding that in itself is about $500,000, is that correct? So that's something that would, concern me in not trying to do everything together now. And then, I guess the comment that I want to make is, I agree with putting it out to the voters now that we've been having this discussion. And what it comes down to partially to me is that we had experts, we had the analysis, we have the numbers. And, you do that for a reason, to gather the data and get educated. The district, our professionals, financial bonds have done this analysis. We're at a certain number now. And all of the projections from all the experts is that it's getting worse. And I feel that we need to educate the public to understand, and we need to give them the choice to synthesize this information and make the decision. And so I would not feel comfortable in us deciding prioritizing 2 or 3 right now, and I think it should be in the hands of the public to understand and make the decision.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I just want to be clear, what you said, Katine, and what you had said. If I'm in real estate, and I've seen these developments all over New Jersey, and I've always had the belief that it's not families that are moving into these apartments and these developments. It's young professionals, it's senior citizens, and we've asked for other developments, and there's children, but not as many as you would think. It's not families moving in, there's studio apartments, etc. So my feeling is, I don't think we're going to see this huge number of people moving in. I think a lot of this had to do with COVID, people moving in, developments happening. There's 2 developments, they haven't even started, and that was part of what we were talking about, the development by Seabreeze and the other one by Harrigan. I don't think Seabreeze is, that one's even going to happen. So we had these numbers that were dictating we're going to have this many kids per year. And I was on the planning board for a year. And one of the things that we learned was that you cannot put children in a affordable housing, in a bedroom with their parents. And I was not happy with that gentleman's numbers at all because he added kids in that way. So I didn't believe those numbers. So I'm kind of like John. There's ebbs and flows with the population of Montville Township. So I'm concerned after a couple of years, we don't see these big numbers, but we have so much that we're asking the taxpayers to pay for. And it's a lot of money. It could be $800 plus the taxes that we have and the town gives. And I'm worried about those who really can afford it. So my question to you is, can we stop at another school? Say we don't see the need. Can we do that?
I think once the referendum is approved, it's difficult to stop unless you have overwhelming evidence because what you're basically saying is the board approved a project, the Department of Ed approved a project, you went to your voters approved funding that project, the board then approved to borrow money for that project, and now the 9 board members sitting at that time are saying, no, we don't want to do that project. There would have to be overwhelming reason why not to proceed with that project at that time. Now, what that means in terms of numbers, if we have X amount, but if it's one housing development, I don't know if that's enough to overturn the will of the voters, to overturn the review of the DOE. I don't like to talk in hypotheticals, but I would work under the assumption that whatever you approve and then subsequently gets approved by the voters, you have to.
Christine, just about the numbers. Right now, we are about 100 students over capacity in our elementary schools. We are anticipating another 150 over capacity amongst the elementary schools based on the organic growth and single-family home developments, excluding the 4 major developments that are either almost complete or are being planned. The ones that are almost complete represent about 2/3 of the units that would be put into these 4 complexes. So 100 plus 150 is 250. We anticipate another 150 from the 4 complexes together. If we only get 2/3 of that, that's still an extra 100 students. So we're already talking 350. 350 students are anticipated, just with what we have going on in town right now, plus there's 2 developments, and excluding the other 2 developments that you mentioned. So that's almost the 400 that we're expecting, right? And then, and I know there's been talk, well, Boonton only had so many students come into their development, and it's supposedly the same size as the one on 46. Okay, but even if you include the number of students that are coming from that development and apply them to our developments, you're only talking about another handful of students, a couple dozen students fewer. You're still talking way more than 300, about 325 students, just from what we can see in town right now. So under the best scenario, what you're saying is we're still going to be 325 kids roughly over capacity in our elementary schools. Does that make sense? Is that valid? No. Christine?
You threw a lot of math at me, Dave.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I understand. It's just that I was here in the boom, in 1998, and not all the schools were done. Do you know what I mean? So there's just a concern because the kids are so important, special education, those students are so important to me, and I know to everyone, but those parents are going to be paying the taxes on it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really cautious about asking people for something that possibly we may not need.
No, I
And
agree.
so,
I fully appreciate your concern, and I agree with you 100%. That is a major concern for everyone, is that we make sure that we do this responsibly, that we don't overextend ourselves. I mean, we don't want to do that, but as you know, we've been bringing more kids back for special ed. We're bringing those kids back. We're getting more kids that need special services. We're breaking apart our classrooms, putting kids in the hallway, subdividing classrooms. I think that the addition of all these new people who moved out with COVID, as you mentioned, there is definitely a bump with that. I think you're going to, at the minimum, you're going to see 325 kids over capacity in the elementary schools. So I don't see where we have an option except to do something about it. So, anyway, let me go over here, Mike, real quick.
Okay, thank you.
You've already spoken.
That's okay. Okay. I just want to make sure we're not overanalyzing this. Keeping in mind that our job as a Board of Education is to make sure that the schools are being run well. We hire a person, in this case the superintendent, to do the job of helping us make sure the schools are run well. Now, Dr. Gorman has, along with Mrs. Lund, has evaluated the schools, the facilities, and made a decision that this is what we need to ensure that our schools are being run well in the future. The price is not something that we as the board negotiate. It's just that this is what we're being told it's going to cost. Now, people say we're asking the taxpayers to pay this or that. We're not really asking the taxpayers to pay anything. What we're doing is presenting to the taxpayers an opportunity to say, if you want your schools to run to their maximum capacity, this is what it's going to cost you. We're not shoving anything down anybody's throat. We're not taking money out of anybody's mouth. We're not mandating that anybody pay anything. We're just giving that opportunity to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers will make that decision as to whether or not they wish to pay that amount of money to make sure that their schools are running to their optimum capacity. If the taxpayers say no, then we have to go to Plan B, and we don't know what Plan B is yet. But I don't see this right now as anything other more than an opportunity. So for that reason, I plan to support it and give the taxpayers the opportunity to have their say as to whether or not to spend the money that Dr. Gorman and the business administrator are recommending that we pay to ensure that the schools are being run as well as they could be run.
John, you have something to say?
You know, I think all of us here want to see the best outcome for the students in this district, and it really comes down to the voters and their option in December. So whether it's this option or other option, it's their decision. So, you know, let's just move ahead with it.
Okay. One last.
I think something about the tax impact, there's this number of 410, I think it's very important for people, you know, here it could be 800 or 1,000, obviously it depends on someone's, you know, house, but the assessed value, for people to really understand that, I think it's very, very important. And then I also have a lot of confidence, based on past history, in the prudent fiscal management of the district. When we did the referendum, how many years ago was the last one, the projected impact ended up being less. It never was that full impact. And obviously we can't predict insurance, interest rates and so forth, but they invested the interest wisely and were able to actually reduce the tax impact. So I feel confident that this is, you know, the worst case, and that the district has proven itself to financially manage these types of things very well, and I think that's an important factor in people understanding the true impact.
Tony, can you expand upon that thought right there?
Sure. With the interest expense or with
Yeah, and how it affects.
Yeah, sure. And then I'll actually let Danielle for Phoenix Advisors talk about the tax impact.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, so we came to the 410 number, and we used a very conservative rate of 410, actually. We've had quite a few recent school bond sales, all coming in under 4%. The market right now is fairly stable, considering the past few years, you know, some minor ups and downs, but we still expect the rate to come in under 4. What does that mean for the overall tax impact? It could be a $10 or $15 reduction on the average home. Additionally, as was mentioned earlier, you can invest the proceeds right now for a very similar rate to which the bonds would be issued, meaning you would earn quite a bit of interest during the construction period. So that would further offset the costs of the project.
In addition to the 10, 15 that you just mentioned?
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
the interest rate is close to what we would be borrowing. So it's basically, we're borrowing the money, but not having to pay anything on the service of it. You know, that's sort of how it comes out, if I'm correct, right?
Yes.
And just real quick, if you want to know how much your home is assessed for, you have to look on your tax statement. It's not how much the home you think you can sell it for, it's what's on your statement as the assessed value. And you'll find that your assessed value is much, much lower than what you think you can sell your home for right now. Okay, I'm sorry, there was a question over here?
No.
Mike?
Yes, just to clarify on these last points here. The first is the 410 number. That's assuming the entire 69,982 bond comes out at once, and then this would be the cost per household on average to service that debt, assuming 0 interest.
Correct. Yes.
Assuming 0 interest being
Earned on the money
correct.
that's not yet spent. Okay, so we're looking at, that's the, I know interest rates can change, bond rates can change, but right now, looking to be the maximum amount that would be assessed in addition to the taxes. If rates come down, or we don't take out all the bond money right away, or we invest it, that number will be lower. Okay. So the next question is, how long do we have to implement the referendum? Let's assume it passes in December. How long do we have until it needs to be completed? So in other words, to John and Christine's points, they're concerned about the projections may not actually pan out, or something else may end up happening, where the needs may be different, the growth may change, or something like that. So if we need to change how we're spending this money, how long do we have to pay it, or to implement everything? Or, as you said, do 2 schools, is it break ground on 2 schools first, and then the next 2 schools, and then a 3rd school? When does all that need to be completed? So how long will all this actually be spread out? So we're actually spending money all up front, but it's actually being spread out over a much longer period of time. So I guess that's the first question. The referendum needs to be completed within.
So, for tax purposes, you have to have a reasonable expectation that you're going to spend 85% of the proceeds within 5 years.
In 5 years.
Okay. But sometimes things change. Litigation happens, you know, contractors, issues, etc. But you have to have a reasonable expectation that you're going to spend 85% within 5 years.
Okay.
John?
Two questions for bond counsel. Is it possible, I'm not saying we should do this, but could we make it contingent on something like class size? If its class size does not go above a certain number, the project doesn't happen.
No, we can't put any contingencies in it. It's just, we're allowed to ask the voters to approve a project and to approve a dollar.
And then the second one would be, we have a focus group that we've been using to see, judge the town. There's one in between this meeting and the next meeting. if we were to not vote tonight and vote on the next meeting, would it impact getting the bond in any way?
So the law was just recently changed in July, and that's why there was a hiccup with your potential September referendum, because that was the initial date. So the county meets the bond question now more than 60 days in advance of the special election, according to the new law. So by October 12th, 13th, the county meets the bond question to do their publications, but some of their publications have to be done 55 days in advance, so I wouldn't even wait till 60 days. I would make sure we get it to them 70-ish days in advance. So really by beginning of October, they need to have the bond question. So the theory behind doing it at this meeting was to adopt it now, we send it to the county in enough time so that they have it, we're able to prove the ballots, etc. That's the legal time.
John, so what is going to change between now and our next meeting?
We can get more public opinion.
I didn't hear you.
Well,
John.
the public
We can get more public opinion.
Wouldn't the public opinion come during the election, or during the vote?
We can at least get a sample size of it.
I'm not seeing any difference between now and
I
waiting 2
think,
weeks,
I
but
think we need as much time as possible because we have to get publicity out.
Right.
Best time to get it out in the beginning of September with the schools, things of that nature. To wait until the end of September, middle of September, you're cutting our lead time down for our consultant and everybody in the administration to notify the public of what's being done. And I think that is not the way we should move at all. That's one reason why we didn't declare an emergency meeting and push it through in July. We needed the time. Thank you. We needed the time. And I think that I think everybody seems to be here ready to go. Joe, me, several other people. I don't see a reason to postpone it, as you said. What's 2-3 weeks? To get more citizens, that's not 9 of us here. We're the elected representatives.
okay. Any other questions?
And just, again, maybe this is being a dead horse here, but again, let's not forget, all we're doing right now is voting to give the public the opportunity to, basically we're voting on allowing the superintendent to try to convince the public that he needs what he's asking for. I think if we vote no tonight, we're not really doing anyone any service. All we're doing is taking away the ability of the public to make a decision. All we're doing is giving the public an opportunity to make a decision tonight. We're not voting on whether or not to spend the money.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
David, there is one little revision to the resolution, which is immaterial if you decide to vote on it. But the ineligible cost for the Woodmont School is actually significantly lower than the $3,611,690. It's actually $597,597. So that affects the total amount of ineligible costs. It doesn't affect any of the debt calculations, etc. And the reason for that was one of the pages on the approval was cut out. So when Katina and I went through it, but Katina has the correct numbers.
I think it's correct. Okay, so board members, these numbers here on the page, they're correct?
Please change the resolution.
And the resolution?
The resolution is 2 minor changes, but it doesn't affect, it's actually better because you have less ineligible costs.
Right. So more eligible. That's great. I'd love to have more eligible. Even though sometimes it doesn't seem to help us with the formulas. Okay, so if there are no further discussions, do you have anything else for your remarks? Okay, so we'll close this part of the discussion. We are going to go through we'll go real quickly through the section G and then open it up for public participation. So give us one more moment to run through section G and then we will get to any public comments. So,
You want us to stay for that?
yes, if you
Yeah,
could,
okay,
please,
perfect.
just for a few more
Yeah,
minutes.
of course.
Thank you. Okay, so facilities and finance, Karen, any report?
The committee met right before this meeting and basically discussed some of the items that we're hearing now about the referendum.
Okay, curriculum, Michelle,
We have a meeting next Tuesday, the 29th.
Tuesday the 29th, okay. Policy, Joe,
No meeting.
no meeting, okay. Communications, Mike Palma.
Nothing scheduled right now.
Okay, safety, Mike Rapport.
We're working to schedule our next meeting.
Okay. Yes, we're having problems getting next meetings. Okay, delegate liaisons, New Jersey School Board, Karen.
Yes, thank you, David. I had the opportunity on July 20th to be down at the Department of Education. I participated in a panel discussion, which, quite dovetailing nicely into tonight's discussion about the New Jersey proficiency, graduate proficiency exam. That's what the topic was at the panel discussion. So basically, we were divided up, and we were about 5-6 people at a table with a representative from the Department of Education, and we were posed 6 questions, which we gave our thoughts and opinions on. That is supposed to be collated by the Department of Education. They were meeting immediately after our panel discussion. We'll wait and see what the results of that was, but I just thought I'd share some of the questions with you. The first question was, what at a minimum should a person who holds a New Jersey high school diploma be able to do? Thoughts on current graduation assessments and graduation assessment requirements? Purpose of the state graduation assessment, what evidence should a state graduation assessment provide as it relates to earning a New Jersey high school diploma? The fourth question was, current legislation uses the term basic skills. What does basic skills mean in 2023? What content should the graduation assessment cover? And is this term most appropriate? In addition to credit and course requirements, what additional evidence may a student provide to show they have earned a New Jersey high school diploma? And the last question was, in your opinion, are the responses to previous questions equitable for all student populations, addressing ESL, special ed, economically deprived, and minority? So it was very interesting. My first experience at participating in that way at the Department of Education, and I'm sure Dr. Gorman will hear more about any conclusions that they might have come to.
Okay, Morris County School Board?
The first meeting of the school year is scheduled for October 5th. It'll be a hybrid meeting, so you can attend in person at Mountain Lakes or virtually. And the topic is trauma-informed and healing-centered practices. So look for the registration online for those who are interested in attending.
What did you say the date was roughly?
October 5th at Mountain Lakes High School.
Thank you.
Morris County Educational Services, Joe?
There was a meeting on August 9th, however, I was not able to attend. That was at the Referendum Communications Committee meeting.
Okay, and then drug awareness as well?
They are going to have their first meeting for the school year on Thursday, September 7th.
Anything from Montville Athletic Boosters?
Now, again, I would ask Tom if he could notify whoever is in charge of the sports that I'm the liaison. If I could get notice, I'd be happy to attend the meetings. Well, I would.
Okay, so as promised, we are now to the first public participation section of our meeting. If you have any comments about anything on the agenda, we will have a second participation session at the end where you can talk about absolutely anything you want to talk about. But for right now, if you have comments on anything on the agenda, including the referendum, I invite you up to the podium, take the microphone and address the board. No one has it. This is amazing. We've been doing here a long time, so it's nice. Okay, consent resolutions. I need a motion on sections I through N.
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, section I, the minutes. Section J, gifts, grants, donations. I'd like to just mention Gallagher Giving Fund. They gave a $14,000 estimate value to the school. Thank you very much for your generous contribution. Section K, facilities. Okay. Section L, personnel. Section M, curriculum. Yes,
Yeah, sorry.
one more thing, yeah.
So I just have for L28, we have a retirement. Gail Serwick is going to be retiring. She's been with the district for approximately 20 years and was an occupational therapist. She had the privilege of working in every school in the Montville Township School District with her students at every grade level. Gail had served as a leader within her department among her colleagues. She utilized the Montville Education Foundation grant opportunities early in her career to find new and innovative ways to engage the students' participation in class through the use of rocking chairs, stand-up desks, and calming corners. Today, we see many of these tools being utilized in each of the schools. We thank Gail for her service to the students and families of Montville Township.
She'll be here through Christmas, though,
Correct.
Okay, policy, section N, policy, questions, comments? Okay, roll call?
Dr. Cordolino?
Yes.
Ms. Zuckerman?
Yes, abstain on K4, item AJ.
Mr. Daughtry?
Yes, abstain on K1.
Mrs. Spano?
Yes?
Mr. Grau?
Yes, abstain on check number 6285.
Mr. Palma?
Yes.
Mr. Petrosino?
Yes.
Mr. Rappaport?
Yes.
Dr. Modrak?
Michelle?
I did, Michelle, she was
Oh,
second, is it?
Yes, I understand. Okay, no closed session announcement, old business, any old business? New business, any new business? No? Okay, so now we have public participation. Anything at all you want to say about anything about the schools? I invite you up to the microphone. Nothing? Okay, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Hello.
Second.
Okay, good night all.
All the time.